right, so we're going to move on to the South region now, and things might look a little bit different, by the way, because this is a new day. I shaved. I have on a new shirt. Matt has on a hat this time, so it's a bit different, but we're just going to keep rolling and get done with the second half of the bracket now. So we're going to start, like I said, with the South region. I really don't have much to say about the 1 versus 16 in this game. One good thing about Florida and their size is that any team they play that is probably below the 8 line, I think they're just going to have their way with. So I think Florida's actually going to have the largest margin of victory of any one seed against their 16 seed this year. So, got the Gators.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of that. I'm taking the Gators as well. I think, like I said, I think that their size is going to be too much for some of the teams in this, at least in this region.
All right, and then the next game we have in the 8-9 matchup, Clemson versus Iowa. Honestly, a pretty interesting matchup. Both teams play a bit more methodically. They are both very good defensively. But the thing is, Iowa has a bona fide superstar in Bennett Sturts. Clemson has a bunch of guys. They do have a good roster, obviously, but it's not one that has extreme power for talent. So I honestly do like Iowa in this game. I think both teams are battle tested. Iowa is reeling just a little bit, but I think that they still have the offensive talent more so than Clemson does to take care of business in this game.
We're already going to start off here, me going opposite with you. I'm actually taking Clemson in this matchup. I do agree with you that I think Iowa, like Bennett Sturts, is he's a great ball player, and I think that they're a lot better offensively. I don't think this Clemson team is great by any means, but the one thing they do very well is they play physical and they play defensively. I think that they're going to try and hone in on kind of the same thing they did against Louisville, hone in on slowing their backcourt down and slowing their stars down. I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think it's going to be an ugly game, but I'm taking Clemson in this one.
All right. And then the 5-12 matchup, I do think that Vandy is underseeded. Honestly, this is one of my Final Four picks from earlier in the year. McNeese, they're back in the tournament again without Will Wade this time, so it just shows that he was right about McNeese when he said their program's going to keep rolling after he's gone. And now both NC State and McNeese are in the tournament. Although McNeese is a good mid-major program at this point, I still like Vanderbilt. It's just their pace of play, their offensive talent, their bigs are starting to show up more effectively. So, and you have Mark Byington, and I picked him to make the Final Four anyways earlier in the year, so I have to go with Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to add. Vanderbilt is just a good team that plays a super high pace, and their backcourt they take care of the basketball, but they force their team to turn the ball over a lot. So I'm taking Vanderbilt in this one too.
All right, and then the next matchup we have the lowest spread out of the top 4 seeds in their first round matchups in Nebraska versus Troy in a 4 versus 13. I thought Nebraska were frauds earlier in the season. Then I was like, okay, well, they're beating enough good teams to where I can't really call them fraudulent. And then they almost beat Michigan on the road without one of their best players. And since that point, I believe they are 6-6 since starting in 20-0. And they just don't have a lot of size, to be honest. Troy is a team that can't take advantage of Nebraska's lack of size. So if Nebraska does win this game, I won't be surprised because Troy doesn't have the ability to be physical enough with them and make Nebraska feel uncomfortable on the offensive end. So I'm leaning towards Nebraska getting their first tournament win in program history, but I am going to pick the upset. I am going to take the Troy Trojans, even though last year when they played Kentucky in a 3 versus 14 matchup, that might have been the worst basketball team I ever watched. So we'll see how it goes this time around. I'll take Troy.
Yeah, I'm taking Nebraska. I think that they finally do get their first ever NCAA tournament win, which is just crazy to think about, by the way. I still can't believe there's a team that makes the tournament at least decently amount of time. It's not some caveman school out there that's just never in here. It's once in a decade type thing. But
and it's a power program.
It's a power program.
Yeah.
And the one thing that does worry me about this Nebraska team and why I would like to take the upset is that this Troy team scores a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these dudes put up triple digits like it's no tomorrow. So it's one where I think that Nebraska will be ready and they'll be more talented and they'll be a better coach team. So they should win this one. But this is the bona fide March Madness. The right team just gets hot. The random 13 seed gets hot in the tournament at the right time. And they'd have a pretty okay route all the way to the Sweet 16 if they really ended up winning that game. But I'm taking Nebraska.
All right. So now this might be the bracket that we've disagreed on the most so far. We already have 2 disagreements in 4 games, so we'll see how the rest plays out. We have North Carolina without Caleb Wilson playing VCU fresh off their A10 conference championship. So this matchup, VCU, it is they have been a solid program. Whether they had Shaka Smart under the helm, whether they had Ryan Odom, and honestly, they weren't gonna. I don't think they were gonna make the field if they didn't win the A10 championship. Surprisingly, I figured they would have been an 11 seed, but just based on where they were slotted after winning their conference championship, they might not have made it. So, I'm glad they're in. North Carolina still has a lot of talent with Seth Trimble, Henry Vasar, Dixon, Jaron Stevenson. They have a solid roster, but VCU, I think defensively is good enough to make North Carolina feel uncomfortable. It's actually really not that hard to do in the first place because they are at times pretty offensively challenged. So I'm actually going to go with the upset here and take VCU over North Carolina.
I'm taking the upset as well. I agree with you. I think that it's one of those where Caleb Wilson, you really saw, which at the beginning of the season, we knew how important Caleb Wilson was to this UNC roster. And then without him gone, the Louisville game is the outlier. I mean, that's a Seth Trimble 30 ball we'll never see again in our lifetime. It's one where if you just make them at least a little bit uncomfortable, they rely way too much on guys like Henry Vasar, who's just not the best offensive mind on the court. And I think they struggle. I think the VCU wins this game.
All right, and then we have the Illinois Fighting Illini as a 3 seed up against Fran McCaffrey, of all people, and Penn, his alma mater. I don't know if you watched the Ivy League championship game. That was fucking crazy. And
I didn't get to watch it, but I saw the TJ Power highlights.
Yeah, man. I mean, that game was off the chains. So, congrats to Fran McCaffrey in his first year at Penn, getting them to the tournament after basically being ousted from Iowa. And I guess they're both benefiting from that situation. So, I do like Penn-style play. I always love Ivy Leagues in the tournament. I tend to want to pick them in upsets, but I think Illinois just has way too much talent for them not to honestly run Penn off the floor. I don't see this being a close game. I'm thinking more like 85 to 64, something like that would be a score. So I'm going to take Illinois.
Yeah, once again, it'd be cool to see TJ Power and those guys go at it again. Continue a good March run, but I think Illinois just, I mean, this team is just the entire Euroball. Like, this is basically an entire European country out here playing against, Pennsylvania University. So I'm taking Illinois.
All right. And then a really interesting 7 versus 10 matchup. You have St. Mary's under Randy Bennett, who plays a very methodical style, similar to Virginia under Tony Bennett. And now you have Buckyball and Texas A&M as a 10 seed. This is literally the clash of major college basketball styles, fast pace versus slow, methodical offense. So I do really like Texas A&M under Bucky McMillan, but I am going to take St. Mary's in this game because Randy Bennett, whenever St. Mary's does get in the tournament, they tend to win at least one game. So I like their style play. It's easier to force a fast team to play slow than it is to force a slow team to play fast. So I think that actually does benefit St. Mary's in this scenario. So I'm going to take the Gales in a close game.
I'm right there with you. I'm taking St. Mary's as well. I mean, the one thing we saw it against Texas A&M this year that they have the ability to kind of go out there and just beat anybody. Like they have the talent, they have the coaching. I do like Buckyball, like the way they run that program, and you can kind of already see this era of college basketball moving over to that super fast-paced, high-scoring offense like the NBA. It's just not there yet. I think that college basketball still is in that slow, methodical, defensive style of play, and we've seen it with the Arizonas, the Dukes. St. Mary's, like you said, is a team that's a great team at doing that as well. That's still kind of dominating, and that's kind of the best way to play right now. They also have I'm gonna butcher dude's name. I have to read it right now. They have Paulius Morauskas.
Oh, you actually said it right. I think.
Is that how you pronounce it? Okay,
At least the last name. The last name.
I had never sat down and I'd heard it 10 different ways. This dude's a hooper. Yeah. This dude can go out there and ball, and I just don't think Texas A&M they struggle defensively. I don't think that they're a team that can really slow a guy like him down. I like St. Mary's in this one.
Yeah, I actually forgot about Mikey Lewis is a really good point guard, too. He's kind of inconsistent, and he's more of a scoring guard, but I don't know if you watched the West Coast Conference tournament, but, God, that dude is a spitfire.
He's good.
Houston versus Idaho in the 2 versus 15. I love I want to call them the Idaho Potatoes, but they are the Vandals. They play in the best arena in college football or stadium. I love their D2 stadium, but Houston's gonna railroad these guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't really see a chance. I think Houston rolls.
All right, now we're back to the top of the region with the round of 32, starting with Florida versus 9 seed Iowa. Iowa can hold down teams that aren't extremely offensively talented, but Florida has way too much size, way too much skill. Um, Ben McCollum, great first season. You brought Iowa back to the tournament. Bennett Sturt's been a hell of a college basketball player, but I think Florida's going to handle business in this game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Iowa. I have Clemson. I don't think either of those matchups really matter here. I don't think either of these teams could even handle Ruben Chinilu by themselves.
No.
You know what I mean? So I think Florida rolls this one. I think this one could get embarrassing.
Yeah, probably could. Okay, I have Vanderbilt versus Troy. You have Vandy versus Nebraska. I'm going to take Vanderbilt in this game. Even if Nebraska were in this, it doesn't matter the opponent. I'm going to take Vanderbilt to actually win comfortably against either team.
I'm right there with you. I think that they play a brand of basketball that's just kind of the kryptonite for both of those teams.
Yep. Interesting matchup that we both have is VCU versus Illinois. Illinois, under Brad Underwood, has had a propensity to choke in the tournament, similar to Tommy Lloyd in Arizona. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think this is the most talented team that Brad Underwood has had probably since the Ayo Dosunmu, Kofi Cockburn days, and probably even more so, top to bottom. So I do think Illinois will win this game and move on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I'm right there. I mean, VCU, we already talked about they're a great defensive team, but at the end of the day, they don't have Keaton Wagler or Andreas Stojakovic. They just don't. And there's one point where when you're playing college basketball, those guys who eventually will end up being bona fide NBA draft picks, they carry their teams in these moments in March, and I think their offense is just going to be too much for VCU to handle.
100%. Now we have St. Mary's versus Houston in the 7 versus 2 matchup. An interesting game. I can't remember. I feel like Houston and St. Mary's have played in the tournament in recent years, but I could be wrong. I do think that Houston's going to win this game. I think Kingston Flemings, JoJo Tugler, Chris Sinak, the whole roster that Houston has and their defensive identity under Kelvin Sampson is just going to be too much for St. Mary's. I do like the scoring ability of the Gales, but when you face a team like Houston that really this year their identity has been demolishing teams they should beat and then struggling against the top tier of college basketball. So for that reason, I do think that they are going to win somewhat handily against St. Mary's, probably somewhere like 65 to 52.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a kind of muddy game. I think that you're going to see one where you're really going to see that St. Mary's is a really good program out there on the West Coast, but I mean Houston in March, and then it's just one where they just play a brand of basketball that is just so good against almost any team. They're a team that if you play a slow and methodical style of basketball like St. Mary's, they play a brand of basketball that they can play your game better than you and also speed you up at the same time. So I don't think that they overpass Kingston Flemings. Okay,
moving on to the Sweet 16, we actually have an all-SEC matchup right here between Florida and Vanderbilt, a rematch of the SEC semifinals in which Vanderbilt won by 17, and they dominated the game. They made Florida's bigs uncomfortable. They actually fulfilled the blueprint of beating this Florida team. And I feel like I talked about it on our last podcast a week ago where I was saying that Florida's vulnerable is if you can eliminate or at least mitigate the impact of Florida's bigs and make their guards be the ones to win the game for them and also not lose the rebound battle dramatically, you can beat Florida. Vanderbilt did that in droves because they were able to make Florida's bigs uncomfortable. They did not get killed on the glass, and Vanderbilt's own bigs were able to attack effectively and score. But they couldn't do that against Arkansas. Jalen Washington and McLaughlin really struggled offensively, and I think that would be the case here again. I actually do think that Florida would win this rematch, mainly because I think their bigs can still be eliminated to an extent by Vanderbilt's style of play and their defensive intensity, but I don't think that you're going to see the same offensive output from Vanderbilt's bigs to make them win the game. I do think it'll be close, but I think Florida would win this and move on to the Elite Eight.
See, I'm actually going to go the opposite here. I'm going to kind of backpack off your Final Four pick here. I'm taking Vanderbilt to win this game again, not for the same reason they won last time. Yes, Florida just has such a dominant front court, and it's just one where if you get into that slow, methodical, half-court style of offense, your chances of winning just dwindle. But the thing is, if Vanderbilt wants to win games, they have to push the pace. They have to, Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles have to force turnovers and get out there and transition. I think that this is a game where they realize that and they start pushing the pace. At the end of the day, if you can play most of your game in transition, turn the ball over, your front court doesn't matter. Tyler Houck isn't getting back in time anyway to outrun dudes like Tyler Tanner. And Duke Miles, dude is the defensive menace. I think that he's going to give Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan too many problems. I think this game's going to be a little too fast for Florida to keep up with.
All right. Well, then in the 2 versus 3 matchup in the Sweet 16, we have Illinois versus Houston. And I know that I just said that Houston this season has struggled with the top tier of college basketball. But I do think that Illinois' style of play kind of goes right into how Houston wants to play teams. They want to play teams that love free flowing offense, get up and down, and to just demolish them bit by bit. I also do trust Kelvin Sampson a lot more than Brad Underwood in these situations. And I do think that Houston has offensive talent to match Illinois to at least an extent, and they're far better defensively. So I do think this would be a good game, a close game, but I am going to take Houston mainly because of Kelvin Sampson and his defensive identity that can carry teams deep into the tournament.
Yeah, I'm taking Houston too. Like you said, this just seems like the end of the road for Illinois. Historically, choking the tournament, always kind of underachieved. Don't really get to the point where you expect them to. I do think that overall, I think this team is a little bit more talented.
Yes.
I think I like Illinois more than I do Houston. But you say Kelvin Sampson at this moment, you just feel like Kelvin Sampson is right on the precipice of finally reaching college basketball stardom, and I think it's a good year for him to at least try. And I think Illinois is just going to get in the way.
Okay, so then my Elite Eight matchup, I actually do. It's all chalk. I have the 1 versus 2 matchup. You have the 5 versus the 2. I will say this is actually, in my scenario, a rematch of last year's national championship game. I do think that Houston is going to win this rematch. They brought pretty much everybody back except for Terrence Arsenault, and I can't believe I'm actually drawing I'm drawing a blank on their big man from last year. Juwan, oh my God.
Oh gosh, I'm blanking on it now too.
Juwan Roberts. Jesus Christ. Yes. Great player. He's gone as well, but they retain Milos Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp, JoJo Tugler. They bring in a great recruiting class highlighted by Kingston Flemings and Chris Sinak. They have more talent this year. But they have also retained the defensive intensity and ability to handle teams on the backboards. And they have struggled, like I said, with the top tier of college basketball this season. But at the same time, I do think that Florida's a bit overrated right now. And I think that Houston's going to be out for blood in this game. I'm going to take Houston to move on to back-to-back Final Fours for, I think, the second time in their history, maybe the first. But I got Houston.
I'm taking Houston as well here for a similar reason that you took. We're thinking about taking. You took St. Mary's and this and that. Is that, like I say, like you said before, it's easier for people to slow down your game than it is to speed people up. And I think this is one where Vanderbilt, they're going to try and do a similar thing to Florida. They're going to try and force Houston to play their game because they've seen that Houston has struggled when playing against the top tier teams in college basketball. I just think that Houston is going to be a more well-rounded team. They're going to force Vanderbilt in that half-court offense. They're a really good team at taking care of the ball. And a lot of that has to go on the back of Kingston Flemings. I think that dude isn't one of the most I don't know if underrated is the word I would call for him, but at the point guard position, I think with how many great guards are in college basketball, I think that he is way underrated. I think that Houston wins this game, goes off on a 4.
All right, so just an updated tracker for my Final Four. I have 3-seeded Michigan State, 4-seeded Arkansas, and 2-seeded Houston. I know that you have UConn coming out of the East. You also have Arkansas coming out of the West, right? And now you have Houston as well coming out of the South. So we have one region left. No major Cinderellas to this point. We'll see if that changes. But we do have a 4-seed. And my prediction that there will be a 5-seed or lower that makes the Final Four this year, we'll see if I even pick that myself. So would you like to get us going into the Midwest region?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and jump into the Midwest, which arguably I think this is the softest region by
really? Well, actually, now with Aiden Holloway, that news that came out this morning, you might be right.
We'll get into that here in just a second. Because of that, I feel like it's really just Michigan and Iowa State. I know Texas Tech has looked good even without Jacob Toppin, but at the same time, they're just not the same team without him. It's such a loss, unfortunately for them. Tennessee, I don't really believe in. But like I said, we'll jump into it. First one, number 1 seeded Michigan versus the number 6 seeded. The winner between UMBC, the Virginia Cavaliers slaughterhouse of 1-16, or the Howard Bisons coming out of the MEAC conference, who has the MEAC Player of the Year on that team. So I imagine we're both going to take Michigan in this one. As much as I love watching Howard play basketball, that
I do have UMBC winning the play-in game, but
Yeah.
There will not be another 1 versus 16 upset like 2018. Got the Wolverines moving on.
So do I. I have Michigan moving on to the round of 32. The next one is the 8-9 matchup before Georgia and St. Louis. This one's interesting because St. Louis was on that like Miami of Ohio level for like 90% of the way through this season. And Josh Schertz, I feel like especially around the city of Louisville and us, a lot of people know about Josh Schertz and heard that name thrown around a lot. He just signed another long-time contract for them, at least at the moment.
Yes.
It looks like he's going to be staying in St. Louis. That dude's a great coach. I have St. Louis taking over Georgia in this 8-9 matchup.
It's so funny. If you asked me this 2 weeks ago, if this scenario came up, I would pick St. Louis 9 times out of 10. But they are reeling as of late. They have lost several games and looked extremely underwhelming. They barely scraped by Dayton, too, in the A-10 semifinals. Actually, no, what the fuck am I talking about? They lost to Dayton.
Dayton won that because
they lost to Dayton.
What was it? Was the last second putback he got the Dayton made?
I misspoke.
Which
I
can't believe. I cannot believe they lost that game. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hits the stand-up three at the top of the key, and then you still lose. That's just a heartbreaker.
That was the most unbelievable 30-second sequence of the college basketball season so far, in my mind. But Georgia does play an extremely fast pace of play. Mike White has actually made runs in the NCAA tournament before. I do like Josh Schertz as a coach. I love Robbie Avila. But I don't know if they peaked a little too early in my mind. And Georgia is now back on its feet playing how they were towards the beginning of the season. I'm going to take the Bulldogs to upset the Billikens in this matchup.
I don't
Even
mind
though
it
they're
at all.
the 8 seed. Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't mind that at all because, like, when you I'm still picking St. Louis, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a struggle for them to deal with Georgia's size as well. So we'll see. I like St. Louis, I like Josh Schertz. I think they get it going. But next matchup we have is the 5-seeded Texas Tech versus the 12-seeded Akron. The 2-bid MAC this season. 2-bid MAC. Akron comes in as a full-on bid in this league. No playing game for them. I got Texas Tech.
I do as well. Neat stat. Akron this season is 0-4 against teams ranked inside the top 125 of KenPom. They have not beat a single team in the top 125 of KenPom. Now, even though JT Toppin is out for Texas Tech, Christian Anderson is a little bit banged up with that groin injury he suffered thanks to the LED courts in Kansas City. Thank you very much. But Texas Tech does still have Christian Anderson, does still have Lawan Watts, still has Atwell, and has Grant McCaslin as its head coach. They are going to win this game and move on to the second round.
Next one we got is number 4-seeded Alabama versus number 13 Hofstra. You kind of alluded to what we're going to get into about this game. I want to take a minute on this one because some news broke today. I still think Alabama wins this game, but how does the news behind Aiden Holloway? Was it Aiden Holloway? Yeah.
Yes.
So Aiden Holloway gets caught with a pound of marijuana and is charged with what else was it? Oh, he failed to affix a tax stamp, which I didn't even know what that was till 5 minutes ago. Apparently, that's just a law based on when you're drug trafficking to basically get you in more trouble. That's like basically all it is.
It's a double-up felony, essentially.
Yeah. So they haven't said how far this is going to go, but I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say he's at least not playing in their first game. But this is also Nate Oates, and he'll play anybody that's eligible or not eligible. So how do you think this affects Alabama moving forward?
Tremendously, because it puts all of the onus on LeBaron Philon to be the superstar that he is, without much help. Now,
shout out Nick Merckx, by the way.
Nick Merckx, what happened?
Turn around.
Oh,
I was like, is that Nick Merckx?
It is Nick Merckx. Yeah, I was so confused. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off. I was trying to listen to you, but I just saw this giant forehead in the background.
Yeah, I love Nate Oates. Alabama. Well, do I love Nate Oates? I love him as a coach, maybe not as a person.
He's a great coach.
Yeah, that's besides the fact of
he's the spearhead of that whole like Nate Oates, Pat Kelsey style of basketball where you shoot a bunch of threes, play a high pass. He's like the spearhead. He is the alma mater of that.
Yeah. And he's had great success at Alabama. He went to the Final Four 2 years ago. He went to the Elite Eight last year. and went to the Sweet 16 as the number 1 overall seed 3 years ago and lost to San Diego State while playing at the KFC Yum Center in Louisville. Um, he's had that sustained success, but now you have another just brutal loss at the worst possible time from one of your best players. So Hofstra has actually been able to compete. I don't know if you're on ESPN's bracket, but if you look at Hofstra's notable results, I mean, they almost beat UCF on the road. They won at Pittsburgh, who sucks, but still. They won at Syracuse, who's not good, but still, power program. They have experience beating power programs and also competing with other NCAA tournament teams on the road. I'm going to pick Hofstra in this game. I watched them in their conference tournament. They were electric. I'm going to pick an upset. 13 versus 4 upset. So we have Hofstra going on to the second round.
Will go ahead and tell you I have not watched a lot of Hofstra basketball this season. I still think that, like, Nate Oates is still a great coach. He'll find a way. And it hasn't been announced that he's not going to play yet, so I'm going to wait till the last minute.
He's going to have to call his judge to have him hop
in again. It wouldn't be the first time Alabama's had to do that this season to try and get a person to play, so it wouldn't surprise me. I'm still going to take Alabama in this matchup, though. Moving on, we got 6-seeded Tennessee versus the 11-seeded play-in game of Miami of Ohio versus SMU.
It's going to be a banger.
Yeah, that's going to be a ridiculous basketball game. I think I'm going to take SMU to win that game.
Same.
I don't think Miami of Ohio can keep up with the kind of pace they play. I don't think they can even stop. But I don't think they can stop SMU's backcourt at all. But I think this is one where the SMU plays so similar to how Louisville plays, where they struggle against super physical teams. And Rick Barnes has that team. I mean, those dudes will beat you up in the paint. They'll do whatever they can. We also feel like I've seen Nate Ament play his best basketball as of the past month, and this dude he's pulling himself higher and higher on the draft list. At the end of the day, I think that Tennessee's just going to be a little too physical and a little too well-rounded as a defensive-minded team for SMU or Miami of Ohio to win this game.
You're completely right, and I do think SMU is going to beat Miami of Ohio. SMU is one of the most talented starting lineups in the entire tournament, in my opinion, offensively at least. Boopie Miller, Jerron Pierre, they will have B.J. Edwards back, apparently. Washington, Samet Igutolu, like, they have a great first five. So I think, especially with Igutolu, there's not a soul on Miami of Ohio that's going to be able to check him in the paint. Like, they're probably going to... I said it was going to be a banger when I thought about it for 5 seconds. I'm like, SMU's probably going to win this game by double digits. It'll be a fun game to watch, but I think they're going to keep them at arm's length the entirety of the game. Now, Tennessee, on the other hand, might be the most inconsistent college basketball this season. But you're very right. They have a consistent identity under Rick Barnes. They have great defenders in Jacoby Gillespie, Jalen Carey, J.P. Estrella, Felix Okpara, and you also have Nate Ament, who's been probably their best offensive player or most skilled offensive player, and he's going to be unguardable at times in a matchup nightmare in the NCAA tournament. I'm going to take Tennessee to win this 6 versus 11 matchup regardless of the opponent because they have been to back-to-back Elite Eights as well. Rick Barnes is a Hall of Fame level coach, and although they faltered a little bit at times this season, I think this is one of the most talented teams, or probably the most talented team they've had since 2 years ago when they had Dalton Connect on the roster and they lost to Purdue in the Elite Eight.
Next matchup we got is number 3-seeded Virginia versus number 14-seeded Wright State. I think Virginia is playing an incredible season of basketball so far this year. They're a lot more fun to watch than they were under Tony Bennett. I mean, Tony Bennett you had respect for because that dude would go out there with the most minimalistic athletes on the offensive end but still beat you by double digits. You're like, how is my team only scoring 13 points in the first half? I feel like I saw that in the Yum Center multiple times.
2015 shout out. Yeah, that was...
God, it was so bad. Now, The feeling I had when Mango Mathiang hit that shot against Virginia, my soul left my body.
I will never forget. Ugh.
To sit back and think that's still the only time we've beaten them in the Yum Center.
That's not true. We did it last year.
Last year, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right
but until that point, I mean, they sucked last year.
But at the end of the day, they're playing they play such a balanced style. Like, they still have that little bit of defensive style that Virginia basketball to have, where they play a team defense. It's not heavy zone. It's not heavy man. They seem to run different matchups, different sets depending on who they're playing. But their offense is like so balanced, and it seems like they can score at almost every level. And they can find a way to play against most teams in college basketball. I'm taking Virginia to win this game.
Yeah,
pretty handily.
Also, I forgot too. I don't know how I forgot, but the year that COVID canceled the season, Louisville did beat Virginia at home that year. So we've beaten them at home 3 times in the past decade. Not a very good accomplishment.
What am I thinking of then? We'd only beaten them once in.
I think it was one time total from 2016 to 2019.
That's what it was, because the last one we had the lead, and that was the one where they gave up the game-winning. Who made that shot in the?
It was DeAndre Hunter. That knocked us out of the Hunter, basically. Yeah.
Yes, I remember that. Now, that's what I'm thinking of.
Thank you, Dang Adele. I appreciate you running the baseline. Anyways, yeah, I agree with you. I do have Virginia in this game. Ryan Odom is a tremendous coach, and he's done a great job not only building the proper roster for this season, but executing and getting a 3 seed. Virginia was down in the dumps when Tony Bennett, I thought, retired in a scummy fashion, really threw his players to the wolves last year, but they've turned it around really quickly. I love their identity of physical on-ball defense, but if you get past them, good luck scoring in the paint against those shot blockers. And they also just have great size and skill with players like Testa Ritter. And you have a veteran, experienced point guard in the NCAA tournament, Dallin Hall, who transferred from BYU. So I think that they have the makings of a team that can make a deep run in the tournament. I do have them taking care of business against Wright State.
Next one, another one for our little region teams here. We have the 7-seed Kentucky Wildcats taking on this 10-seed Santa Clara. I'm taking Santa Clara to win this basketball game.
I want to so bad.
It's one where this team can score almost at will. They play an extremely well-balanced style of offense. They have some pretty good pieces for a Santa Clara team. Like, they have some serious talent on that team, and this is one where they this is not a great matchup for Kentucky in this game. They shoot a lot, and Kentucky struggles to defend behind the arc, and struggles to push people off of hot shooting games, no matter who they are. Whether you want to go back to Michigan State, whether you want to go back to their game against Louisville, it doesn't matter if they're playing against a team that is known for shooting or not. Georgia being another one. When a team gets hot against Kentucky, Kentucky cannot slow them down. They have no idea how to slow that down, and a lot of that comes on Mark Pope. Mark Pope just does not know how to get his team back mentally, which for a team that has come back by so many large deficits, it's ridiculous to think that these losses against Georgia and Texas A&M can happen, but they do. I think that it's going to be one where Kentucky's going to be rearing again. They're going to get down. I think they're going to have the lead for a little bit, but then Santa Clara is going to kind of get hot. I think it's going to be similar to that Kentucky-Texas A&M game, where it gets kind of out of hand for a pretty long segment, maybe like a 10 or 11-0 run, and then they just never come back in it.
Trying to figure out, because I don't disagree with your points at all. Trying to figure out where is this Kentucky game being played?
It's in St. Louis.
St. Louis, that's right.
So they'll probably have a crowd there.
Oh, they're going to have a crowd, that's for sure. Which may or may not matter, honestly. UK is maybe arguably been a bit better on the road than at home this season in tough matchups. So Santa Clara, I've watched them probably 5 times this year. They can shoot the shit out of the ball. They play efficiently, and they do. It's such an intangible thing, but team camaraderie really does make a difference in March, and they have that. Unlike Kentucky, which they have had a lot of inner turmoil this season, especially in the first half of it. Santa Clara's, they lost to Gonzaga all 3 times. I remember I watched their entire home game against Gonzaga because there was a lot of hype around them, and they're like, oh, they're going to finally get the monkey off their back and beat Gonzaga for the first time since I was born, basically. And they got handled. They competed in the West Coast Conference Tournament, ultimately got handled in that game a little bit too. Gonzaga's physicality just knocked them around. They did split with St. Mary's in the regular season, so they have the ability. Kentucky, though, does have more talent than they do.
Do you think there's somebody on Kentucky's roster that can stop Allen Graves, though?
I don't know. Is there anybody on Santa Clara's roster that can stop Otego Oweh?
There's not. I'll give you that. There is not.
It's just you have Otega Owe who can get to the rim against pretty much anybody. Colin Chandler, when he plays without sleeves, I don't know if you've heard that stat. Like
I heard it, which he did against Florida and had almost his worst game of the season.
Yeah.
So he broke that streak.
He did, but still, it's Florida. If he plays without sleeves, Brandon Garrison, he's starting to come alive somehow. I have a feeling that this game is going to be insanely close, but Kentucky's ability to score one-on-one, whether it's Otega Owe, and Denzel Aberdeen's actually proven to be a really good one-on-one scorer in the past month as well. I think that's going to carry them to victory in this game. They are going to have the home court advantage, quote-unquote, whether, Kentucky will probably have about 10,000-ish fans there, which can make a big difference. So while I agree with you that I think Santa Clara is a very, very valid upset pick in this case, my gut just tells me I think Kentucky's going to win this one.
I don't mind it. Final matchup within the round of 64 of the Midwestern region. Number 2 Iowa State versus number 15 Tennessee State. We have a little bit of a homebrew connection with this Tennessee State team. And head coach Nolan Smith in his first season under Tennessee State, which picked him up in July?
Yeah.
And has these dudes in the tournament. So that's honestly congrats to him. Maybe we should have had him bring down Kenny Payne's hierarchy a little bit earlier. Maybe he could have done something for us. But I'm taking Iowa State in this game. I think that Iowa State's defense is just insane. I mean, they could slow down almost any team in the country, make them play their brand of basketball, whatever they want. As much as I want to say that Nolan Smith can possibly, create some magic here, I think Iowa State's a pretty bad matchup.
I agree. Cool for an HBCU to make it in as a 15 seed. Nolan Smith, for his, under the circumstances, to bring this team to the tournament is pretty incredible. And turns out we actually had a somewhat decent coach on the bench the entire time. That we had Kenny Payne here, which
he was
sucks.
avidly trying to sabotage the team so that he could be the head coach.
Yeah, that might actually not be incorrect anymore. But anyways, I agree. Iowa State, I mean, they have just too many guys. I think they're going to run away with this.
I think so too. We're going to go back to the top of the bracket again to the round of 32. We have number 1 seed in Michigan. You have Georgia, number 8 seed Georgia. I have number 9 seed St. Louis. I don't really think it matters. I think Michigan. I mean, this is where I started to say that this side of the region where it just doesn't hold up as much. I got Michigan going through with almost ease, depending on no matter who they play.
Yeah, LJ Kaysen or not, I think that in the Big Ten tournament, even though they lost to Purdue, Elliot Cadeau did prove that he can be the scoring guard and facilitator that's needed for Michigan to still make a run without one of their best shooters and their best six-man. So, Michigan, whether it's Georgia or St. Louis, I think they win this game.
Next to the round of 32, I have number 5 seed Texas Tech, where we both do, against you have 13 seed Hofstra. I have 4 seed Alabama. I unfortunately made this bracket, which I guess I can still change. It's not locked in, before the news of Aiden Holloway coming out. For me, if Aiden Holloway does not play, I'm taking Texas Tech in this matchup. Like you said it before, it's just too much work on LeBaron and Philon. Like, as great as he is, we've already seen this year that when it is put on his back solely, he needs his supporting cast to step up to at least keep it a close game, and he can win it for you down the stretch. But when it is solely on him to facilitate the offense and be a leading scorer, Alabama struggles. They just don't have the defense to slow the game down enough for that. So at this moment, I'm going to take Texas Tech. But if Aiden Holloway ends up being clear by this time, I'm taking Alabama. But for right now, I'm taking Texas Tech.
I don't care if it's Texas Tech. I don't care that it was Alabama. I'm taking Hofstra, the Hofstra Pride, to the Sweet 16 as my only double-digit seed to make it to the second weekend of the tournament this year. Pulling it out of my ass. I'm calling my shot. I could very well be wrong. I probably will be wrong, but who cares? This is the fun of the NCAA tournament. Taking the Hofstra Pride over the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
It's overdue. We haven't had a double-digit one in this. Or at least we haven't picked one in this bracket yet. So yeah. I would love it. So that's fine with me. Next one, we have number 6 seeded Tennessee versus number 3 seeded Virginia. I think this is one where Rick Barnes being your head coach kind of hinders you a little bit. Where, Tennessee's never made a Final Four. I don't think they do it this year. I think that Ryan Odom and this Virginia team, are just kind of catching their stride at the right time, and I think that they're a lot better than the national media is kind of making them out to be this late in the season. I think they move on.
This is, to me, a fascinating matchup, honestly. In terms of Virginia's big men, I think there are very few teams in the country that can match up with them and eliminate them. You think of Duke, who did it twice. Florida definitely can. And I'll say Tennessee can. You have Felix Akbar, you have JP Estrella, Nate Amon, who's 6'11", and he plays the 3. They have the requisite size to not be extremely impacted by Virginia's shot blockers. And although I was just praising Virginia and Ryan Odom this year, I was at the Louisville-Virginia game in person, you were as well. I've watched them plenty of times this season, more than I wanted to because I dislike Virginia. They have not impressed me enough to make them, or to be in my mind, a team that can really raise above the top of college basketball. That's not to say that Tennessee is the top of college basketball, but to make it to the Sweet 16 in this case. I think that Ryan Odom, what he's establishing, is going to be very successful at Virginia, but I actually think about Rick Barnes. He's a great coach, not to make the Final Four necessarily, but still a Hall of Fame level coach, an incredible defensive mastermind. And I don't think Virginia is really going to have the offensive skill to score enough to win this game. I mean, is there really one just dynamite scorer that Virginia has? You can say Testa Ritter, but he's not a guy that you just hand him the ball and he just gets buckets one-on-one, especially when you have a guy like Nate Amon who's going to guard him. You know, they have shooters like Jakari White, but he takes really erratic shots, and against a team like Tennessee, that's what they want you to do. I think that Tennessee's play style can really hinder what Virginia wants to do in this game, so I'm actually going to take Tennessee to move on to the Sweet 16.
Okay. Final matchup in the round of 32 for the Midwest region. I have Tennessee at Santa Clara. You have Tennessee at Kentucky against both of our number 2 seeded Iowa State. Same. I think Iowa State moves on to the next round here. I think that it comes down to the fact that no matter what team they play, it's going to be one where, whether it's Kentucky or it's Santa Clara, they're going to go up against a buzzsaw of a defense to go up against. And this is a team in Iowa State that can also score at the 1 through 5 position. Like, they really don't have a spot in their starting lineup that just hinders them offensively. And if you're taking Santa Clara, I don't think they have anybody with size that can match up against anybody against Iowa State. If you're taking Kentucky struggles to defend on almost anybody that could score at almost every level. Brandon Garrison and Mo Diabate have struggled slowing down in the paint, which they thought that was going to be their biggest strength this season. Colin Chandler can't defend a traffic cone out there. Denzel Aberdeen's their best defender. I mean, he's a half step slow at most of the guards in college basketball. It's going to be one where I think the Iowa State handles whichever team that comes in here pretty handily. I would give them like 12 plus.
Tamin Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, Josh Jefferson. That's their big 3. Kentucky, Otega Oweh, Colin Chandler, Denzel Aberdeen? I don't know if Kentucky really has a big 3. Iowa State has a bona fide star power in their big 3. And they have a great roster below that. And they have a guy named TJ Otzelberger who has not been very successful in the NCAA tournament outside of his first appearance where he made the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed. I don't really think there's that much to it. I hate his haircut, though. Yeah, his haircut is god-awful, but he knows how to recruit. And he knows how to coach defense.
And he knows how to lift weights. That dude is fucking jacked
as shit. And he knows how to coach defense, and his players know how to score well enough, at least. I'm taking Iowa State to beat Kentucky probably by 15 plus.
Yeah, I think that game's going to get, no matter who it is, I think it's going to get pretty ugly. Moving back up to the Sweet here. Now we're in the Sweet 16 area of the Midwest region of this bracket. Michigan versus, right now I have Alabama, but I'm going to go ahead and swap that for Texas Tech at the moment. Michigan versus either one. Don't think it's a great matchup for either of these teams. Alabama, I could see Michigan's kind of struggled down the stretch of keeping up with like these high-paced basketball teams that can, shoot the shit out of it. Like you said, a lot of that has come down on the back of Elliot Cadeau just not being able to step up in those big moments against these great teams recently. But he showed it in the Big Ten tournament that he is able to step up and like you said, be that scorer they need to. So I'm still taking Michigan on, honestly, either of these teams they play against.
Hofstra, congrats for making the Sweet 16. Your day of reckoning has arrived. Michigan will murder these motherfuckers. Michigan's the Elite Eight. Nothing else needs to be said.
Gosh, would you? How long into a? Let's just pretend that's not actually. Let's pretend that you've convinced me right now. You've convinced the college basketball gods. Hofstra is going up against Michigan, and to be determined date in the Sweet 16. At what point do you think Michigan starts sitting their bench players against or starts playing their bench players fully against Hofstra? We're getting walk-ons in the game.
So do you remember? I'm sure you do. St. Peter's runs the Elite Eight, right?
Yes.
So they beat 2-seeded Kentucky. Then they beat Murray State in the second round. Then they beat 3-seeded Purdue with Jaden Ivey and Zach Edey.
I still don't understand how they lost that game. I just
Neither
don't.
do I. Do you remember their Elite Eight game? Do you remember who they played?
No.
They played North Carolina with Armando Bacot, Caleb Love, R.J. Davis.
R.J.
Brady
Davis
Manek.
being like 35 years old.
Yeah, well, that game, let's just say, St. Peter's made a great run, but that was a 20-point game 5 minutes into the game. It's going to be the same thing in this case. And
Yeah.
I would say maybe you bring the walk-ons in at the under 8 timeout. So, blue all the way right here. Ugh, much as I hate saying that shit. All right, Michigan the Elite
Yeah,
Eight.
it's rough. It's rough. I have Michigan Elite Eight as well. Moving on to the other game, the matchup in the Sweet 16. Number 3 seeded Virginia for me. Number 6 seeded Tennessee for you against number 2 seeded Iowa State. For me, I think that Tennessee would be a better matchup for a team like Iowa State with the length they have and how well they do play defensively behind the arc and really forcing you to play their brand of basketball and they kind of force you to play paint basketball. They're not going to let you shoot it a lot on them, which I think that Iowa State, they are one of the worst teams in college basketball in terms of like 3-point shooting efficiency, but you also have probably the best shooter in college basketball, ironically, in Momcilovic. It's one where I think with my matchup against Virginia, Iowa State kind of handles that in terms of they don't have exactly the length. Iowa State kind of plays into the game that Virginia wants to play, and they play it a little bit better than Virginia does. So I'm taking Miami, or I almost keep saying Miami. I'm taking Iowa State to move on to play Michigan State in the Elite Eight. What do you think about Iowa State and Tennessee?
I think it's also a really good matchup, but I do think that Iowa State is just a much more talented version of Tennessee this year. And they have somewhat similar size. Jacoby Gillespie can make Tamin Lipsey's life a bit difficult in this hypothetical matchup. So I think that Tennessee will keep this game close if it happens. But I am going to take Iowa State in this one just because I think that they have the dudes that Tennessee has lacked this season. So I have another, I hate to say it, 1 versus 2 matchup in the Elite Eight, Michigan versus Iowa State.
Yeah, we're back here again. It's one of those where every single season when you make your bracket, whenever you just see a bunch of 1s and 2s in your Final Four, you just kind of feel gross. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, I'm just kind of just going with the casual basketball fans here.
Don't have any yet. Don't have any. We don't have any yet. So
it's one of those where you're right. We don't have. I don't have a 1 seed at all in the Final Four. So
so you spoiled it.
I kind of just spoiled it for you. I'm taking Iowa State in this game. I think this is the one where Michigan, they've been reeling towards the end of the season. I feel like we've used that phrase 100 times already on the show, but that's fine. It's one where I think we've kind of seen their true colors. They've kind of slowed up a bit towards the end of the season, not even just in tournament play, but at the end of the regular season too. They had a lot of really close calls in games. They could have, one team makes one more shot here or there, gets one more stop here or there. The game entirely flips. I think this is the one where Michigan just kind of finds their reckoning. They finally don't squeak out that win against a great team, and Iowa State takes advantage.
So Michigan this year, similar to Auburn last year, was for 95% of the season Thanos levels of inevitable. And then they faltered a little bit. At the very end of the regular season, and into the SEC tournament, and now the Big Ten tournament, Auburn lost in the big SEC semifinal to, I think it was Florida. Or hell, no, I think it might have been Tennessee. I can't remember. It was Tennessee versus Florida in the SEC championship. Florida won that game. This year, Michigan should have lost in the semifinal to Wisconsin, but pulled it out of their ass thanks to a coverage bust, leaving Yaxel Lindeboard wide open for a 3, and then they kind of got handled against Purdue in the Big Ten championship. With that said, Auburn was reeling at the end of last season, did not make it to their conference championship game, but still did make the Final Four in a semi-dominant fashion. I think that even without LJ Kaysen, I don't think there's a guy on Iowa State that can contain Adai Mara. And then let alone you have to put all that attention on Adai Mara. You have Merez Johnson to deal with in the paint. Then you have Yaxel Lindeborg to deal with on the perimeter. Nimari Burnett is a great glue guy at the 2. Elliot Cadeau is firing on all cylinders at the point guard position. They're not as deep as they could be now without LJ Kaysen, but they still have so much talent and defensive ability. I don't know how Iowa State is really going to consistently score on Michigan. I think it'll be a lower scoring game, but I am going to take the Wolverines to move on to the Final Four and be my only 1 seed in the Final Four.
So we finished all 4 regions. We are now here in the Final Four. I have UConn going up against Wisconsin on one side, and then I have Arkansas against Iowa State in one side. I have 3 2 seeds and a 4 seed. You have – go ahead and read me – I already forgot of all the ones you have. Go ahead and read me yours as well.
Oh, wait, you have Vanderbilt, right?
I don't have it. I have Vanderbilt losing in the Elite Eight to Houston.
So you have Houston, you have UConn, you have Arkansas, and you have Iowa State, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You said Wisconsin. I had me confused. I was like, wait, where's Wisconsin?
Did I say Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's
I think I meant to say Arkansas. I think I was
that's probably what it was because they are in the West. So I actually have a 1, 2, 3, and a 4 seed. I'm Michigan State coming out of the East, Houston coming out of the South, Arkansas coming out of the West, and Michigan coming out of the Midwest. So I guess we'll start with the first Final Four matchup, which will be Michigan State versus Houston in my bracket. I think that these teams are somewhat similar. They love to play hard-nosed defense. They have a physical nature about them, and they have 2 defensive masterminds, a head coach and Tom Izzo and Kelvin Sampson, respectively. They do have each a star at point guard, Jeremy Fears for Michigan State, Kingston Flemings for Houston, but Kingston Flemings is better than Jeremy Fears. The big men on Houston are better than Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper. Cohen Carr, I don't really know how you're going to score in this game, brother. Emmanuel Sharp will be sniping threes. I have Houston making it to their 2nd straight national championship and beating Michigan State.
I have Michigan making it to dude, I'm getting all these. I have Houston making it to their 2nd straight national championship as well, but I have them beating UConn. I think this is the one where, kind of like my reasoning behind Michigan losing to Iowa State, it's the one where UConn has just played these teams way too close that are like, I think that Houston is a better team than UConn overall. I think UConn has more talent overall. I think that Dan Hurley is a overall better head coach than Kelvin Sampson is, but it's one where Dan Hurley has just kept these guys in games that they should be blowing these teams out. The entirety of the Big East season this year has been, I can't believe UConn scraped out this win. I can't believe they're going to overtime against Providence. I can't believe this. I think their time is finally going to run out. It's finally going to catch up to them. You know, it's just it's the same issue with Kentucky basketball this season. They played so many games in a row where they were just squeaking these wins out, squeaking them out, just coming back from ridiculous margins. And now at the end of the season, it's finally caught up with them. It's impossible when you come towards the March. And I think that brand of basketball is just, it's going to run out here in the Final Four. So I think I have Houston moving on.
Okay, and then on the other side, I have Arkansas versus Michigan. You have Arkansas versus Iowa State. I do have Michigan winning this game because I do think that even though Arkansas has plenty of talent, they don't have as much talent as Michigan, and I don't think that their front line is really going to be able to compete. You know, Malik Ewan and Trevin Brazile are great. They're athletic bigs that can be physical, but they're not as good as Iowa State's bigs. And if Iowa State can't contain Michigan's front court, I don't think Arkansas is going to be able to do that. Darius Acuff will do his damnedest to keep Arkansas in the game. Not saying it's going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that the Wolverines take care of business, and we have a 1 versus 2 matchup in the national championship.
So I have Iowa State winning this game, finally reaching the big game that they've been kind of alluding towards for years on end. You know, like I said before, I think in the first episode the other day we did, where it seems like our entire lifetime Iowa State has been like good and you always feel like they're always seated pretty highly, and you're always got these huge expectations for them, and they always flop out. I think it's the one year they finally get there, and I think a lot of that comes on the back of I have them beating Michigan. I feel like they played basically the national championship game in the Elite Eight. So when you beat Michigan in the Elite Eight, you start to look down. If the bracket lays out the way I have it, you start to look ahead. You think Arkansas is in the Final Four. If we can get past Michigan, we have a great chance of playing an Arkansas team or a Gonzaga or an Arizona, or let's say that Arizona could probably make it as well. That'd be a bad matchup for them. But in the way that I have it laid out, I see it going that way in terms of you already passed the super dominant, the David and Goliath matchup. You already got past it. Now you get to play a team that you kind of win the matchup battle against in terms of, you're right, they do have Darius Acuff, they do have Trayvon Brazile, who I think has already shown to be one of the best power forwards in college basketball so far. But I just think Iowa State just plays so much better together as a team and as a unit, and then you don't see as much fall off on the bench as you do when you bring in guys like DJ Wagner, who, like, okay, thank God on Sunday he hits 3 threes in a game to help you win. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those where Iowa State's a lot more consistent when they have to go deep into their bench than Arkansas is, so I'm taking Iowa State to move on and play Houston in the national championship game.
All right, and then for my national championship, I have Michigan versus Houston. And as you'll see in a minute when I talk about my, basically, I guess you can call it an algorithm to determine who will win the national championship. Michigan was one of 2 teams that my algorithm popped up to be a national championship winner. And I think they're going to do it under Dusty May in his second season. Even without LJ Kaysen, I think that their region is weak enough and the teams that they're going to be matched up with are susceptible enough that they will make it to the national championship. And at that point, Houston, like I've said, has struggled with the top tier of college basketball this season. They made it to the national championship, but now I think they're going to have heartbreak for the second year in a row. I hate to do this to Kelvin Sampson and the Houston fan base, but I think that they lose another close game to another 1 seed. And the Michigan Wolverines win their first national championship since 1991, I think it is, or 1990, around that area. It's been a long time, and I think that they are going to win this game because they have the most talented roster in college basketball, and they have a great coach who's had Final Four experience. And I think that they're going to take care of business and beat Michigan. Michigan will beat Houston. I'm going to say 78-73.
Okay. I am going to go full opposite here for you. This is one where I feel like I've bet on Kelvin Sampson to finally win the big one for years on end, and I'm just going to keep taking the bet because I just know in the back of my mind at some point Kelvin Sampson is going to get over the hump and reach the precipice of college basketball, and I think this is the season. I think that Iowa State, like I said, I'm taking Iowa State in this game. I think it's a great matchup for them. They're 2 heavily defensive-minded basketball teams. It's going to be extremely low scoring. It's going to be a rock fight out there in a national championship game, which in a regular season game, I'd say this game is terrible. In the national championship game, I'm thinking this is the best brand of basketball I've ever watched. And I think it's one where, as much as I've loved Iowa State up until this point, Kingston Flemings and Emmanuel Sharp are just going to be, I feel like, too much. It's going to be one where those great guards and those great pieces, those all-star talent is going to shine bright at this point in March. And we're going to see some really beautiful moments here in this Final Four with all these teams we've picked. I'm taking Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars to finally get over the hump. Just like your Michigan pick. It's finally going to happen no matter what, either on our end. We're going to see one we haven't seen in a long time.
And I do hope – I don't want Michigan to win the championship, to be honest. I do want Houston. I just think, like, from an unbiased perspective, I think Michigan's a better team. But it would be great to see Kelvin Sampson finally make it to the mountaintop. He's a great guy. He's a great coach. He's a great role model for his players. And the Houston fan base deserves this, I would say. The Indiana fan base does not. No. Fuck them for firing Kelvin Sampson. He didn't deserve it. And, yeah, I hope that after spending over $10 million on their basketball roster just to not make the tournament, that Kelvin Sampson does win it and puts a double fuck you to the IU administration. So we'll see. But that is going to wrap up our bracket predictions. I had Michigan State versus Houston in the Final Four, Arkansas versus Michigan in the Final Four, and then ultimately Michigan beating Houston in the Final Four or in the national championship.
Oh, I forgot to give a. Sorry, I forgot to give a score. I think that this game. I think Michigan. Sorry, Michigan. I think Houston's going to win 72-71. I think it's going to be super close.
And
I think it's going to come down to the wire.
Again.
I think it's going to come down to the wire. Sorry, I forgot to give that out when I gave mine. But you kind of alluded to it earlier. You have a metric you want to bring up and an algorithm you brought up to kind of help you pick your national championship winner. Why don't you go into that really quick?
Yeah, so I think I sent it to you, but I will put this on the screen for viewers to see, at least the actual graphic. So I took every power conference, at-large team, or conference champion and put them into a data set where I ranked multiple metrics that are extremely important to success in the NCAA tournament. This is not meaning like, can you make the Sweet 16? It's can you win the national championship? And I weighted them on different scales. So, for one, the lower the score you have in this algorithm, the better. And the reason why is because I use a couple metrics like KenPom's offensive and defensive efficiency. Obviously, if you have a lower number, that means you're higher ranked. So, for example, Michigan is first in the country in defensive efficiency, but they're 8th in the country in offensive efficiency. So, that's why you want the number to be lower, because if you're 101st in defense, then it's going to be way higher. And it's like, well, how do you really make that work? So I have those two metrics. Then I have, do you have a top 25 coach in the sport or not? That is a small metric in this, but still there. Same with one, it's kind of arbitrary in a way, but it's, do you have a I call it top 25 current prestige. Like, is your program currently in the top 25 of the sport? Do you have that program prestige in which you can attract high-level coaches, high-level players, and rich donors, basically? That's only 5 points on this scale, unlike the coach metric, which is 10. Then do you have top-tier guards or not? Guards win games in March. They carry you to national championships, more so than your front court will. That is also on a 15-point scale. Then is your team hot? Are you currently on a 3+ game winning streak? Did you win your conference championship game? Did you lose in the first round of your conference championship game? That is also only scaled on a 10-point scale because sometimes teams can win their conference tournament and then lose in the first game. That's been a known fact of the Big Ten, is that a lot of their conference champions lose very early on in the NCAA tournament, which is why they haven't had a national champion since 2000 and why Michigan will break that streak. Now, in terms of other stats, probably the two most important, and one that is kind of odd, is one is rebound margin. Do you rank in the top 50 in the country in rebound margin? And that is how many more rebounds do you average a game than your opponents? That's on a 20-point scale. And then the last one, I know that a lot of bracketologists or data guys in college basketball, they say you have to be top 30 in offensive efficiency in KenPom and top 44 in defensive efficiency in KenPom. However, they're using the 44 because that's an outlier on just a couple of cases. I'm going into this without thinking about an outlier national championship coming in, say like an 8-seeded UConn or a 7-seeded UConn versus an 8-seeded Kentucky in 2014. Like, that is out of the equation. So I have just top 30 in offensive and defensive efficiency. So if you're top 30 in both, that's 40 points in your favor. So what it comes out to is a scale where there's a cut line of your total score being a 0. If you're above that line, you're not making a run in the tournament. If you're below that line, then you do have a good chance. And the lower you are, the better. So, teams that are below that line: Michigan, Duke, Arizona, UConn, Houston, Iowa State, Illinois, Florida, Michigan State, Gonzaga, Vanderbilt, Virginia, and surprisingly, Louisville. Notable teams that are above this cut line: teams like Purdue, teams like Nebraska, Kansas, Texas Tech, Alabama, Arkansas, St. John's, North Carolina, etc., etc. Like I said, this doesn't mean that you can't make a run in the tournament. It just means that you're not going to be the national champion. And the two teams that are at the very bottom of this graphic are Arizona, who I have losing to Arkansas in the Sweet 16, and Michigan. The only other, the closest team to that, surprisingly, is actually Illinois and Duke. So, if you were taking this as your metric, you would have that be your Final Four, essentially, because I think all four of those teams are coming out of different regions. But I digress. There are teams that are way above 0. Like, I think the highest number I had was 247, and that was from SMU, actually, who just squeaked in the tournament. I have SMU, like you do, beating Miami of Ohio and then losing to Tennessee in the first round. So you can take a look at this as a way to measure who you want your national champion pick to be, and then who you think has a good chance at making a run to the tournament. I didn't include things like turnover margin and 3-point percentage because I feel like those stats have become a bit more muddied up with the differences in style of play that we've seen in the past 5 years or so, where teams are getting faster and shooting more threes. So you're going to have a lower 3-point percentage because you're taking a lot more, and you're going to have more turnovers because you're having way more possessions. That's just how it works. But things like rebound margin are fixed. That's not going to change no matter the style of play. It's like both teams are going to have equal opportunities to get those rebounds no matter if it's a fast game or if it's a slow game. So that's why I didn't use total rebounds per game. I used rebounding margin. So that's why I have Arizona and Michigan as the two best national title contenders, and I have Michigan winning it all. So, yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it.
Well, if you're somebody who is still building the bracket or has yet to do so yet, make sure to look at Will's metric here. Maybe that'll give you some insight on who your pick should be. But it's been fun doing this the past couple of days. It obviously has been a lot longer than we expected. Originally, we were debating on, we're like, we'll just do like a quick 20 minutes on a region, this and that. We'll make it into 4. Well, each region, first region was an hour. The first region we did, which we kind of switched it up, moving region to region. We didn't give as much explanation as we were before, but to kind of make it concise, make it a little bit easier to listen to. But we appreciate everybody listening. We'll be doing this again next week after the full, or I guess a week and a half from now, whenever all the first round is completed. Our brackets are locked in. We're putting them together. We're gonna compare them towards the end once the championship is done. But we're gonna go week to week, round to round. So once the round 64 has concluded, we'll be back at round 32. We'll go through all the matchups there and give up our updated predictions. But we appreciate you guys for listening to our bracket matchups. Hopefully, your guys' brackets don't get as busted as probably ours will be.
Yeah.
Because some of the horrendous picks we have on this show. But like I said, appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll see you back on the One Shining Podcast next time.
Go Cards, beat South Florida.
Go Cards.